today we have Julie, our estate planner from Life Plans. So Julie, handing over to you. Would you like to share your screen?
Okay, thank you.
Great stuff. Over to you.
Right, so for general information, a will sets out what happens once you've died, but a lasting power of attorney gives you consent to deal with something whilst you're still, somebody else consent to deal with your affairs whilst you're still alive. So I've just got a little peep here from Martin Lewis, hopefully. It's going to load up. Here he comes.
Hiya, so my question is, at what age should you nominate a power of attorney and how do I go about doing so?
How old are you?
25.
That's a good age. Simple as that.
Okay, so that's Martin Lewis saying, yeah, you should always get a power of attorney at a very young age. And a lot of people tend to think that power of attorney is something you do when you get old, looking at dementia and things like that. But unfortunately, anybody can have an accident or become ill at any time. And so they need that power of attorney in place. So there's two types of power of attorney. Both of them are very powerful documents. They give somebody that you choose, whilst you're still able, the ability to deal with your affairs for you whilst you're still, what you do whilst you're still able. They can then deal with your affairs for you if you're unable to at a later time. So as I said, wills take place once you've died. The power of attorney is what you need whilst you're still alive. The two types, we've got the property and financial affairs. It's what it says on the tin. It gives somebody the authority to deal with any of your finances. So that could be just paying a basic bill, right through to selling your property if you need to sell it to pay for care fees, something like that. The property and finance one, you can give your attorney's consent to deal with your affairs whilst you still have mental capacity. And that's a very useful tool. You don't have to have any reason to not be able to deal with it yourself, apart from the fact that you're not physically there. So for instance, if telephone goes off, first thing you do, you ring the BT or somebody like that up, and the first question they will ask you is, are you the account holder? If you say no, they won't deal with you. If you say no, I'm not the account holder, but I do have power of attorney, then you can sort the problem out. Second type of power of attorney is the health and welfare. So that again, it's giving somebody consent to deal with decisions relating to your health and welfare. But with this one, whilst you have capacity, it's entirely up to you to make the decisions. Your attorneys can only act on your behalf once you've lost capacity. But it can be something as simple as, do you go into care, or do you have people coming in your home to look after you, right through to your attorney choosing whether or not a life support machine is turned off. So if you haven't got the power of attorney in place and you do become mentally incapable, then it's a case of applying to the Court of Protection for what's called a deputyship order. Now, at the moment, obtaining that deputyship order takes about 12 months and the costs are approximately £5,000 because you will need to go through a solicitor to deal with that. So whilst that's been applied for, nobody has any access at all to your finances. And also the court may not appoint the person that you would have chosen to deal with your affairs for you. If you've got medical problems, then nobody, even family, are not going to be consulted as to where you live and how you're cared for. So it really is important to get those in place. And when I said the deputyship at 5,000, that's one for property and another one for health. So some people think they don't need an LPA because they're married and they could deal with their partner's accounts. Unfortunately, marriage, being in a civil partnership or long-term cohabiting or even being a family member, doesn't give you any rights over anybody's bank accounts. I'll come on to the next slide in a minute, but joint bank accounts can be frozen if one person loses capacity. There's a lot of confusion between wills and powers of attorney, but as I said, power of attorney, that's looking after you whilst you're still alive. And again, a lot of people think they're too young. As Martin Lewis said, 25 years old is a good age to get something in place. You never know when an accident or an injury might happen. So the deputyship, it is time consuming, it's expensive, and nobody can access funds whilst they're waiting for that. Sorry. So the need for a power of attorney, it comes up with anything. So it could be a sporting accident, could be a motorcycle accident, car accident, just general health, somebody falling over, tripping over something and banging the head, any reason that you could lose capacity. So main benefits of the property and finance is managing your finances with access to your banking, paying any of your day-to-day bills, pensions or benefits, business people. If something happened to you, who would carry on your business? Have they got the authority to be able to deal with contracts, pay any bills, anything like that? And a big one is selling your property. If you've lost capacity and you haven't got the power of attorney in place, you're not going to be able to sell, nobody's going to be able to sign the documents to sell the property on your behalf. So with the joint bank account, banks can freeze joint banking account to prevent any withdrawals from the account if one of the account holders is mentally incapable. The purpose of the joint bank account, which is what a lot of people don't appreciate, is that the agreement is that both individuals can withdraw from the account up to its limit. So if one of those people has lost capacity, they cannot make the agreement for the other person to be able to withdraw from the account. And that's why it's frozen. And a lot of people think, I've got joint bank accounts, it doesn't matter if the other person loses capacity. And actually, it's probably one of the worst things that you can have in place if you haven't got the powers of attorney. So I think most of us heard the story of Kate Garraway. And unfortunately, Derek went into a coma with COVID. Totally unforeseen. Nobody knew or expected that might happen. But they didn't have anything in place. And most of their household bills were in Derek's name. So poor old Kate was in a right mess. She couldn't negotiate any renewals on insurances and things like that. She couldn't cancel any direct debits on his account. So she couldn't even stop an insurance and take something out in her name because she didn't have the authority to deal with any of his finances. So as I said, practical everyday uses. If the account holder's away, if you've got power of attorney in place, the attorneys can act on your behalf. So the second one, health and welfare. So it's medical care, life-sustaining treatment, daily routine. If you've got, I had a case where somebody was vegetarian and got into a nursing home, and the nursing home didn't actually provide a vegetarian menu, and so the old lady was not actually eating anything. So son's gone in, he did have the power of attorney in place, and he was able to say, look, give her vegetarian food. They did that, and then the lady was eating and thriving again. So not a very clear picture because that was the only one I could find on the internet, but it's a story of Betty Figg. Betty was in a nursing home whilst her daughter made amendments to her own property to get her back home. They had the property and financial power of attorney in place, but they didn't have the health and welfare one. So daughter took Betty home against the nursing home's wishes. The next day, the police turned up with a battering ram to take Betty Figg back to the nursing home. And they put that sheet over her and dragged her back off to the nursing home because the daughter didn't have the authority to look after her. So when you're picking attorneys, it should be someone you trust. I strongly recommend you have more than one person, and they can act either jointly or they have to make decisions together. You can put replacements in place. So a lot of people will have husband and wife or partner will be attorney for each other, and they'll put adult children as replacements. So it's a good idea to have somebody younger, because if you put your partner or a sibling, they're going to get older, same as you are. And just basic principles. If somebody needs cash to pay things, it's no good having attorneys that live miles away. It's a good idea to have somebody local. And think about causing family arguments. If you've got a large family or several children and you don't nominate them, consider whether they're going to fall out. Sorry, I'm conscious of time. So basically how it works is you can only set the powers of attorney up whilst you still have capacity. If you lose capacity, you can't set it up retrospectively. You would have to go to the Court of Protection. So you choose who you want to act on your behalf, and whether you want one person to act on their own or whether you want them to act jointly. There are problems with jointly in that if one of them dies, then you haven't got a document that's effective. You can choose whether you want to set up one or both types, but I would strongly advise doing both. And with the property one and the financial one, do you want your attorney to act immediately or only if you've lost capacity? Now, people again think, oh, I only need it when I've lost capacity, but a lot of people, again, as they get older, tends to lose their physical ability to be able to do things, so they can't get out and go to the bank to get cash, but they still have mental capacity. So it is recommended, again, to set it up whilst you have capacity, but your attorneys can only act with your consent. And then it has to be registered with the Office of the Public Guardian to be a legal document. So unfortunately, the government want their bit out of it. It is £82 per document to register. And if somebody's on low income or means tested benefits, it is reduced to £41. But that is quite an expense on top of actually setting the document up. Okay, so I'd like to return to everybody, and I don't know if we've got time for any questions, Ian.
We can take one or two quick questions. That would be awesome. Thank you, Julie.
I'm not getting you back, but never mind. Gone quiet.
There we go. So thank you, Julie. Some really good tips on there. And I think that piece from Martin Lewis speaks volumes, because I've never thought of it in that context that, you know, absolutely I had it in place for mum, but didn't think of it for me. So maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. So has anyone got any quick questions for Julie before we move on? Susie, go ahead.
Mine's not actually a question, but I just want to say I learn something every time you do this chat, Julie, because one thing I didn't realise was if you had a joint bank account that you are still affected by it. I automatically thought if it was a joint bank account, you could still carry on doing it because, you know, you're still there. So that's a really interesting thought. Thank you for that.
And it makes sense as to why when you know it, but you wouldn't think of it. James.
Yeah, so it's £164 per person. Was that what the registration fee was at all, Julie? No.
Yeah, that's a bit for the Office of the Public Guardian, and the document can't be used until it's been registered and stamped by them.
Okay, thank you.
Julie, how long is it taking at the moment? Because I know it was taking around 6 months to get the POAs in place.
Officially on the website it says 20 weeks, but they're coming through at about 4 months now.
Okay, that's good. That's better.
I mean, they are speeding it up, but it is still slow, which again is a reason to get them in place before you need them, because you've got that time to wait.
Definitely.
Otherwise.
Definitely. Superb. Okay, Julie, thank you very much.